We'll move on to item number 8.13. Item number 8.13, approval of the resolution authorizing the purchase of real property located at 414 West Franklin Street, Shelton, Washington, for a total of $825,000 plus closing costs, with a 25% down payment and a monthly installments at 4.5% for 5 years, paid from REIT 1 Fund number 350. With that being said, would you like to do a brief introductions again and why the change?
Thank you, Commissioners. The dollar amount on the purchase of the building has dropped. We reduced the proposal from the county to $825,000 because of the building inspection report that represented some improvements or changes or fixes actually that needed to be done to the roof. So with that, we took that as consideration for an adjustment, and it was approved. So currently the purchase price is $825,000. All of the other terms stay the same. Closing date is projected to be the next Wednesday.
Is there any questions for staff in regards to the testimony he just gave? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now would be your opportunity to testify on this issue. If you would like, we ask that you raise your hand, be recognized by the chair. We'll have you come up to the podium. Please announce your name, perhaps where you're from for the record, and here we go. Who would like to testify? Tom, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just like to point out, and I realize this is a done deed. This is the last opportunity any member of the public is going to have to participate in this process, which is a process that started evidently back in September, according to what I'm looking at that's stated on the purchase agreement. The purchase agreement that was included in the packet, at least for public's consumption, was is an old purchase agreement. It has the wrong sale price on it, the selling price. It also has a condition where this price is only to be honored if if the county purchased the other property. In other words, this is just old news. There's no information that the public can use in this. This was just slapped in there without.
Tom, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I got a question on that. Were none of the addendums that included in the citizens package?
There's addendums, but not relevant addendums. So, and I'll be glad to share this.
Yeah, please.
This is just old news, all dated September 27th. So none of the addenda was moved in there. So it's hard to have an opinion on something that you don't have the document to support. And that has been, I think, true from the conception of this idea all the way through to the final approval, which will occur later on today. I don't know why that is. It certainly is. I mean, if somebody takes the time and trouble to download all this and read through it, and there's always 160 to 200 and some odd pages of stuff that you have to ferret through to find the relevant documentation, then maybe a little bit more effort could be put to making sure that the documentation actually is there. Some of the things that was discussed about this purchase, for instance, there was my understanding that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there would be an offer, and then there would be an appraisal of the property. Now I'm not talking about an agent's portfolio or an agent's profile rather, but an actual MAI appraisal from a commercial appraiser, so that the public could at least rest assured, even though those of us who are vehemently against this would at least see that the money is being well spent for the product that's being purchased. I don't know if an actual appraisal has occurred. If it has, then it hasn't been posted. So, excuse me if I'm wrong on this. But you have to include, and that's my point always, that you have to include the public in this process if you want to get some alignment or support from the public for what you're doing. And as I said before, we're reasonable people, even though we very much agree, and I disagree with what you're doing here. When the inevitability presents itself, then we look for, okay, how can we make this work? In other words, no one wants to see it fail. We want to see it work. Having said all that, I would say that the realization that's happened on this purchase is that there's such an enormous amount of money that goes towards public safety in terms of policing and enforcement, and then the court system. And we do it year after year and decade after decade. And it's a marriage of failure. It's not going to work. It doesn't make any difference if you go ahead and build a brand new jail and float a bond for $25 or $50 million. It doesn't make a difference if you bring the court system down there and ferry all those people down there. It doesn't work, and it will never, ever work. We made a slight little adjustment in our thinking when we started therapeutic courts. They're operating at what I assume is maybe 8% of their capacity. What we should have is a gigantic therapeutic court system and a very small punitive system. If we haven't learned by now that the punitive system for nonviolent crime doesn't work, then we probably never will. From experience, we'll have learned nothing. And so if this was going to be something where the whole place was going to be a therapeutic environment, you'd get my support full-throated, but it's not. What we're going to do, I believe, is we're going to take the misdemeanor offenses. Now, the misdemeanor offenses, and I've spent a lot of time in court in those last 3 or 4 years between felony court and district court. What you're going to have is a whole bunch of flotsam and jetsam going down there, 1 block off of Railroad Avenue. These are the drunk drivers. These are the DV4s. These are all the people that you probably wouldn't want mingling around in your business district. These are nuisance cases in a lot of instances, and you're moving them down closer to the business corridor. I don't really see the sense in that. I don't see a long-term commitment to or a reasonable resolution to this. I see this as a stopgap measure that I believe a lot of people are going to regret. Having said that, you're going to do it. We'll try to make it. We'll try to make it work, and I think be open to what's going to happen here, because it's not going to go exactly as you anticipate. There's going to be some problems. So.
Tom, on some of your questions that you had on that, first of all, I want to apologize. I agree with you that there should be, all of our addendums should be included on what we put to the public. For the record, for you to know, I do know that one of the original addendums was the separation of the 2 buildings. The second addendum, or may have been included, the first was the price change because of that action. The next addendum, I think, is the one we're working on. There was a time addendum, and then the next one is the one we're working on right now. Just so you know, so those are the addendums, and we will get them to you as we should get them to you. They should have been online, and my apologies for that. As to your question about the appraisals, just so you know, there have been 2 appraisals on the building. One was done by the owner, but that one is not public. It's owned by them. But we also had an appraisal that is done by the county commission that sent it for appraisal. As a realtor, I know that stuff can be private, but I don't think it can be private in county government. Is that releasable? Do you have any issue? They will release that to you as well, and get you a copy of that appraisal. It just came in. It literally just came in to re-verify, because we can't sell anything without it. And one last little piece, how the building is completely going to be used, each and every part of it, some of the requests or concepts or ideas you have may be able to be incorporated into that, because that is not completely final on how that's going to be done.
Okay, we've had great success with programs outside the court. I'd like to see that happen inside the court a little bit more. Just one question: was the appraisal by an MAI?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well thought out questions on that one. I like it. Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to testify? Yes, please. Former City Commissioner Mike Olsen.
Mike Olsen. A couple of things. After listening to a somewhat bleak financial outcome report that was done at the beginning, I don't understand why you continue to put money into a situation that's clearly not going to be affected by this. And I think my point is that I don't think people care about the courtrooms, the small amount of time each person spends in there. I don't think they care that they're crowded. I think what they want is incarceration, and this moves not anywhere towards that. The county has already spent, what, $4 million acquiring the old church property. Here's another $1 million on a building, and I've yet to hear how much it's going to cost to retrofit this. That hasn't been brought forward. I assume you have a plan, or you've talked to architects, or I haven't heard whether you've talked to the city building official. When you did the building inspection, I haven't even seen any public report on the condition of the building. I know it was brought up and asked for, and I don't understand why those things have to be asked for. If you're going to spend $1 million, to sell this to the public, why isn't you guys should just be forthcoming, telling us what your intentions are, what it needs, how much more money it's going to cost. Anecdotally, I understand that the roof cannot be re-roofed again, and that's probably why it dropped $100,000, that there's some significant issues with that. Then you're not going to know it till you open it up. I just think that to get the public behind these kind of things, and of course there's only 3 or 4 of us that opposed you on this, there should be more information shared sooner. The county, like I said, the report is pretty bleak with how much funds you have to spend, and yet you're going out and going to spend upwards of $2 million on this project, coupled with the $4 million that's already been spent by the county to buy land for a public safety building complex. It just seems like you're approaching $10 million here, and you still have Norcrotta Jail. You still don't have adequate courtrooms. And I understand you're going for a regional facility, but what are you going to do with all this stuff that you've accumulated if you get to do the regional facility? So my point is, if it makes any sense, is just to be more transparent with these kind of things, to let the public know what your intentions were, what the condition of the building is, and how much you're going to spend to retrofit it. I'm assuming I had another $500,000.
Yeah, and we might be able to find some of that out for you right now. One of the things, the other purchase of property was way before I came here.
Exactly.
Are you talking about the sheriff's office?
That's all we got out of it was the sheriff's office.
Okay,
you also, you accumulate where the church was and everything.
Okay.
It was a $4 million purchase.
Yeah, that was before me, so I didn't know. The other thing is, do we have a rough estimate for construction?
We do have a preliminary. We do have preliminary numbers in regards to construction, but the design and use of the building has not been defined yet.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000, but it depends on what we end up putting there and how it's configured.
Thank you. And one other point, when it comes to information, as you said, there's 4 of you that have been, kind of have to ask for it so we can give it to you, because I can't force feed everything we have to you and everybody in the public unless they ask for it and tell me they're even interested in it. But as I've said again, that is the new appraisal that just came in the other day is available for you also, as is the inspection. The last time we had a meeting, we made that available as well, and that had just come in right before our meeting as well. So there's not even a time lapse between making it public and available to you. Is there anybody else who would like to testify? Yes.
My name is Pat Burke, and I see what's getting ready to happen here today, and I'm kind of astonished. I mean, if we're going to be putting money into a facility like this, we need to be putting money into the future. Here we are, we're going to buy a 60-year-old building that's literally disintegrating. All you got to do is walk around it and look at it. Everything's up and at the code. Basically, and this is my own opinion, I think that property over there is worth whatever a commercial appraiser would value the property itself at, less the demolition and haul-off cost of that building. We should be building for the future, not buying. I mean, we're not buying the Alamo here, okay, to save our historic past. We're going to end up spending a lot of money. I have not yet seen or heard of, Mr. Pinder's just talked about, well, we think it's going to be this much or that much. I haven't seen anything on paper, haven't seen any architectural renderings of what the building will look like when it's finished. We now have this Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal thing that went through where you got to march criminals from there to from the jail and back and forth, and you can't chain them, and you know, it's not a good scene at all. And I've spoke about this at a prior meeting, I think twice now. I would, while I'm standing here, I'd like to commend Mr. Wyndham, I think his name is, on him and his people's lengthy report on our problem here with finances in Mason County. And yesterday I was fortunate enough to become sworn in as a U.S. citizen, naturalized, and the lady that held the ceremony said to all of us in the room, she said that you have the privilege of living in the state of Washington, and she said, I think she said we are the only state in the union that has the initiative program in our state government. And she says, every one of you in the room, she says, are actually, if you want to be, you can be state representatives. And I think the only way that we're going to solve these budgetary problems, especially with the law and order issues, is that we're going to have to find another stream of revenue, and I've talked about that before. And we need to take another look at the highly protected, unregulated natural resources industries in Mason County. I think there's 3.5% there, no problemo. But it's going to take an act of the people. It's going to take guys, men and women standing up at Walmart, getting signatures and explaining to people what's going on here. You're going to, I think, and it's just, this is my own thought, I've sat down and I've penciled it out. I know a couple of people in town that are pretty knowledgeable on how much business goes through some of these, especially the plywood plant, Mankeys, and to say nothing of the standing trees that nobody's paying personal property taxes on. And we're looking at a minimum coming into our county coffers of about another $5 million a year. That can make a big dent in our problems. I have no doubt about it, and I think it can be done. I think it's just going to take an initiative. We're going to put it on the ballot, have people vote on it, and once it becomes law, well, then I guess the commissioners are going to be, whoever's sitting here at that time will be entitled to have to pay attention to what's going on and start collecting the revenues that we need. Another thing too that does, if we were to do this, and it wouldn't take but 1 year or so to show how much we are actually collecting off the natural resource people, is it'll give us it'll up our, I don't think we have much of a credit rating here in Mason County anymore from what I've heard, but it will give us collateral to float a bond, to build a jail, to build a regional justice center, which we need so badly, and evidently the state of Washington's not going to pay for it for us, so we're going to have to come up with the money ourselves. And as I've said in other presentations up here, is that when the Growth Management Act was passed in 1996, it completely exempted all natural resource industries in Mason County, I don't know about other counties, from any growth regulations. But it didn't exempt them from fees or taxes. And I think that, Mason County is just it's a giant honey hole of natural resources. I think we got everything here. I think we're pretty unique as rural counties go here in Mason County. We've got shellfish, we got a big, a lot of people may not realize it, but a pretty big gravel and minerals industry that goes on out here. And we got all the trees, the sawmill operations, plywood plant, and then all the growing trees that are sitting on especially low taxed properties that are marketable trees, and the owners aren't paying personal property tax on that personal property. So if you want to know where the money should come from and think outside of the box, this is where it needs to come from. I think it can be done. I think if it's voted on by the people and approved, it's going to get done. It can get done. I just don't want to sit around and talk about this too much, and some wise guy up in Olympia says, hey, we should tax all the natural resources in every county in Washington state. And they come in and suck the money out, and we don't get any of it. And we're still sitting in the same position. Like I said, we need a resource, a revenue source, that's uniquely our own and can't be touched by the state. It's ours. It's easy to collect the money. Everybody in business out here pays business and occupation taxes. They'd be taxed based on their B&O filings every year, like Christmas tree companies once a year with them, but everybody else quarterly. So you got money coming in quarterly, and once the money starts coming in quarterly, you got the dough to pay the bond payments for the jail or whatever it is we've done. But I'm gonna tell you, I don't think that this Olsen Furniture store is a good way to go. I think the property, I just don't think it's a good fit based on, especially with the things that are changing now in the law, the non-shackling, you can't secure these people to get them back and forth. And heaven knows where this 940 or this 960, I can't remember which one it is, where police have to sit and think about it before they can pull their gun and defend their lives, how that's going to affect what's going to go on in transporting people back and forth from the jail to the court. So I would strongly recommend that if we were going to buy the Olsen property, it would be to basically implode it, haul it off, and build a brand new whatever there. That's the best way to go. Let's invest in the future, not try and salvage something from the past that we may end up not having a use for down the road somewhere, or the county will lose money, and we certainly are losing tax revenue. You're taking $17,000 a year they get on property taxes, and we're turning it into a $12,000 a month payment, a deficit out of the county, to say nothing of the remodeling costs. And like I say, nobody has come up with any remodeling costs. I mean, you need to have an architectural layout. You got to know it's, first one, seismically. Is this dump seismically safe? I don't think it is. All you got to do is look at Alaska. All we need is like happened a week ago, have that happen right here in Mason County. And if it happens at 10 o'clock in the morning on a busy work day, we're going to have a real problem. Well, of course, we're going to have a real problem citywide, but we're going to have a real problem with that one building if you got 200 people in there or whatever, and the place comes down. Or the liquefaction starts and it literally comes down. Like the Marina District did in San Francisco in 1988. So, like I say, this is the last I'm going to have to speak about this, and I think it's wrong. I think that it basically shows malfeasance in office. And like I explained, malfeasance, the meaning of that word is to cause harm or injury. And it's certainly going to cause harm to the taxpayers, because you can't tell us what it's going to cost when it's all finished. You can't show us what it's going to be when it's all finished. So how do we get behind you when you do this? And I'll be right honest with you people. I think if you approve this, Miss Drexler there, she's out of the picture next month, but I think you two need to be hauled up on recall. I really do. I think what you're doing here is a disgrace, and you're going to leave a legacy in this county that's just, everybody's going to remember it. So do what you're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who would like to testify on any item on this issue? Anybody else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of item 8.13, approval of the resolution authorizing the purchase of real property located at 414 West Franklin Street, Shelton, Washington, for a total of $825,000 plus closing costs, with a 25% down payment and monthly installments at 4.5% for 5 years, paid from the REIT fund, REIT 1 fund number 350.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded for the approval of the resolution authorizing the purchase of real property located at 414 West Franklin Street, Shelton, Washington, for a total of $825,000 plus closing costs, with a 25% down payment, monthly installments at 4.5% for 5 years, paid from the REIT 1 fund number 350. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I believe this is the 10th or so time that we've had a public meeting about this very issue between our briefings and the public comment that we've received here. It would be a gross mischaracterization of it to suggest that we haven't taken public comment on this, or we haven't received public opinion. We've received public opinion from roughly 3 people at those meetings. Now, I'm not saying that is indicative of the general population or not. That's just kind of how this has gone. And typically, it's not a good year or a complete year until I've been threatened with recall at least once. So I appreciate being able to get that in under the wire here in 2018. But at one of our previous discussions about this purchase, I implored folks that spoke against it to go visit district court, to go visit the courthouse. This is about providing an appropriate space for defendants to have their day in court, but it's also about providing for county staff. County staff matters. And they don't just spend a few minutes in front of the court being arraigned or having a hearing about their driving while suspended. These are people that work in that building day in and day out on top of one another, in between all of the files and the court records, with those working conditions that I have heard since I took office are a great detriment to their quality of work life. And so yes, this is about creating additional court space for defendants, but it's also about providing for the needs of our county staff. So in case, if you haven't had a chance to go over to district court recently, I hope you do take that opportunity to go visit with those good folks over there, because they're working in very cramped quarters. And so I think this is also about providing for their future workspace needs. A lot has been made recently of this Ninth Circuit ruling about about protecting defendants' due process. It's important to protect due process. However, just also want to be mindful of the fact that it's 2018 heading into 2019, and we have other technology to help address that issue by way of video arraignment, cutting down on some of the transportation issues that we may face. I've also done a little bit of digging here, and it turns out you don't need to locate your district court in the county seat. You need to locate your superior court there. We need to conduct our business in the county seat, but we can move a district court anywhere in the county. Anywhere in the county. If I wanted to move it with consensus from the commission to Belfair, whether or not that's a good idea is immaterial, but if we wanted to, we could. If we wanted to move it to Matlock, we could, or have it in Hoodsport, we could. But we have chosen through this purchase to invest in downtown Shelton and not outsource those county employees to another part of the county, but rather in an effort to continue our partnership with the city, keep those jobs here in town where, I don't know, they might go take their lunch break at a restaurant downtown, or they might stop for coffee on the way in at a local coffee shop, as opposed to sending those dollars outside of the city of Shelton. And yes, we are going to have to put money into rehabilitating the inside of that building because it was a furniture store. Very few buildings are built to be courts, except for the one that's 100 years old across the street from us. And so, yeah, we're going to have to make an investment. And good news for the city of Shelton, they have permit fees. So they're going to get a little bit of money out of this too. This has been, I think, much ado about nothing. This is a good investment for the county, for its taxpayers, and frankly, it's a $1 million plus investment in downtown Shelton. And so, if I'm wrong, I will be judged on this decision. That's part of the job. Comes with the territory. But I think this gives us the best chance to improve our court facilities, to have a functional 21st century court, and then go after the bigger issue that we have, which is space for incarceration. We know we need to address the jail. This has never been an either-or decision in my mind, or frankly in this commission's mind. That's why a number of weeks ago we went out for the RFQ to begin exploring building a new jail, whether that's jointly with Grays Harbor County or a standalone jail here in Mason County. But this is a $1 million investment to save $40 million on building a brand new court facility that I don't think the taxpayers of Mason County want to pay for. If they knew we could do it more cost effectively and efficiently this way, while making that investment in Shelton. So that is why I appreciate the dissenting opinions, and there's always room to improve process-wise. I agree with that. But I still stand by this decision as a good one for the future of criminal justice in Mason County.
Commissioner.
I just wanted to address one comment and then make the connection from the Budget Advisory Committee. report we just heard, you know, the assumption that we don't have the funds for this. And I want to be very clear when we had these motions on our agenda that these monies were coming from the real estate excise tax. And we've got a 20-year analysis, fiscal analysis. Obviously, it's not going to be completely correct all the time about the affordability of this using that fund. And just to be sure people know, that money is obligated to capital facilities only. You can't use it to pay for a new sheriff. You can't use it for anything but a capital facility. And through a 20-year projection, we see that we can't afford this purchase, and we can't afford the retrofits. So just to let folks know that despite what we heard about our ability to afford governmental functions and services, we do have a funding source required by law to only be used for capital facilities. We've done a 20-some-year analysis and determined that we can't afford it using that dedicated funding source. And I am in favor of this motion to accept a lower price so we can afford the roof repairs.
So was there an actual motion on that? Or?
I made the
Okay,
motion.
and so that's a second then?
Yes.
Okay. And I have some comments on it, obviously. As Commissioner Schutte pointed out, we can couch it however we want. It's $1 million to $1.5 million investment. And in my way of looking at it, it's $1.5 million investment to save us $30+ million, because we have to do something. If you go over and you see where we're putting these people, and we can't, we now have them going into areas where the boiler rooms are, and we can't make that work. We just can't. The cost of making that work is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for little pieces of building. That's one of the problems that has occurred through this, through our knowledge, and because we do attend all those meetings, because we do all this studying, we are making the best decision we can based on the information we have, because we're here. You know, from the outside, you can look in and say, hey, this. You have to sit in every meeting and work with us to understand where we're coming from, and understand that we're trying to do the very best that we can. And you may disagree with us, but please at least give us the benefit of the doubt that we're trying to do the best that we can. There's no personal relationships here. I wouldn't know them if they came in. You know, I had heard somebody made a comment about that once before. It's like, you're kidding me. I wouldn't even know if they were sitting here in this room right now. It doesn't work that way. This is absolutely needed for this county. As for money going for the jail, as I said before, we invested $1.5 million first. That was our first investment of $1.5 million. We only have so much that we can do at a time, and that kind of backfired on us. And we end up with less room in the jail than we had when we started. When we did the $1.5 million investment to grow it, we still have to look at the jail, but one does not take away from the other. Without a doubt, this is still needed. As a matter of fact, I don't think you would get a jail without it being a criminal justice facility to take care of the issues we have in the courthouse if we don't do this. I don't think they will support it if they can't be taken care of as well, because the criminal justice system is all wrapped up together here. And it may not be perfect. There was comments about investment in Shelton. And I think it was you that had said in the past, you said it today, but you've always said in the past, I don't think they'll complain much when they're buying food from the restaurants. And all these people that are coming into Shelton will be walking down the street to do other things here. It may not be perfect, but it's still something better than if we leave Shelton itself. Some may like us to go, but at the same time, it does bring in business as well with those people. It's not perfect, but it's cheap. And if I get recall because I'm trying to save $30+ million, then so be it. I'm okay with that. At least I know that I've done my due diligence all the way through this. And I do want to point out one other thing. There's been a lot of talk about us not being upfront with information. We're giving you everything we have. You know, as soon as it comes in, all you got to do is ask. We asked in the last meeting. It was asked about the inspection, and we made it available. Did anybody take you up on that? So nobody took them up on the inspection, even though publicly we said it's there. We'll give it to you. It's easy to say the words here, but if you want to do the work and come in and say we're doing something wrong, please do the work on that end as well. With that being said, is there any further comments?
No.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries.